Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for you. Wherever you happen to be right now, this is episode number 6 of the Results Matter podcast. I'm Mike Voorhees, and I help business leaders, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals become measurably more successful. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that's been getting kicked around and debated for quite a while in America. I'm talking about the $15 per hour minimum wage. Is this necessary livable wage or something that will crush small businesses? Let's explore. Just a quick ask before we jump in. If you haven't already, would you please subscribe, share, and give the podcast a 5-star rating and a great review wherever you like to listen? It would really help us get this content to more people who could really benefit from it. The Results Matter podcast is now available in video form on YouTube. And as always, audio only on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever else you like to listen. Here we go. The $15 per hour minimum wage debate has been brewing for the last decade. The federal minimum wage sits at $7.25, and it hasn't moved since 2009. Those who support more than doubling the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour argue the move would pull low-wage earners out of poverty. President Joe Biden said in a January 14th speech, "If you work for less than $15 per hour and you work 40 hours a week, you're living in poverty. No one working 40 hours a week should live in poverty, or should live below the poverty line," he said. Some supporters of the $15 per hour minimum wage argue that increasing the national minimum wage, it'll help reduce inequality. But the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office found in their 2019 analysis that increasing the minimum wage nationally to $15 per hour by 2025 it would lift wages of 17 million Americans. However, 1.3 million would lose their jobs. Part-time workers and adults who never graduated from high school would disproportionately find themselves unemployed. Raising the national minimum wage will not reduce inequality, not in any meaningful way. It will further separate many of these wage earners at the very bottom from the rest of the workforce. Seattle was the first major city to raise minimum wage to $15 per hour. Studies found that their initial increase to $11 an hour had little impact on employment. However, their second increase tier, up to $13 per hour, triggered a significant decline in both hours worked and jobs. I personally believe attempting to reduce inequality through minimum wage regulation is just more identity politics aimed at dividing America against itself. If there is inequality in America today, it sure as hell isn't being caused by the minimum wage. The $15 minimum wage is a great talking point during elections, and it certainly wins votes, but it's never going to reduce inequality. And it's never going to elevate a large population out of poverty. For an idea like this to work, everything else would have to remain the same. The minimum wage increasing to $15 per hour would have to be the only variable that moves, but economics has taught us that that simply isn't possible. An increase in minimum wage caused by anything other than business necessity triggers movement in other variables, close to proportionally. Prices of goods and services will go up, eventually giving the $15 a similar spending power and worth as the amount these workers used to make. Jobs will be eliminated, forcing even more below the poverty line and onto government assistance. Also, when you raise minimum wage, those workers aren't the only ones to consider. Wages of higher earners in those same companies and industries will also go up. To adjust for consumer costs and to maintain certain necessary margin differences between positions. Think about it. If a fast food worker's wage goes up $3 an hour, so must their supervisors a similar percentage. Most politicians in the government, they don't understand business. As scary as it is, they really don't understand economics either. We turn to the business world when we need something done efficiently and effectively. Aside from maybe the military defense, there's really nothing the government does as good as the business world. The most recent clear illustration of this is the manufacturing and distribution of COVID-19 masks, face shields, and the quick vaccine creation. The government could never do what businesses do. The more the government interferes with business, the worse off our economy becomes, and the more businesses and employees alike suffer. If we want to take a serious look at reducing poverty, minimum wage wouldn't even make the agenda. Okay? If we want to reduce the number of people living in poverty, we need to take a look at the real issues, not just those that draw sympathy and get votes. For instance, we need to completely revamp our education system. Our schools aren't coming close to preparing young people to be successful. We need to teach young people how to maximize their contribution to society, not how to get as much as possible from it. We need to teach personal accountability, not entitlement or the victim mentality. Teaching people to maximize their contribution to society will in turn, of course, lead to their individual success well above the poverty line. And finally, we need to restore core values and strong households. If the goal is to reduce poverty, we need better education. We need personal accountability, less non-essential government assistance, a restoration of core values, and strong, solid households. It's not just that businesses shouldn't have to bear the burden of paying workers more than the market demands. Arbitrarily increasing minimum wage by regulation will crush companies, especially small businesses, and it won't fix the problem, not even close. It will take a bad situation and make it much worse, such as typical when the government interferes with private business. There isn't a worse entity in America to have their hand in private business than the U.S. government. While I'm not a fan of minimum wage at all, it's just not necessary in our market-driven economy. I would rather see this a state or local issue if we must. At least at the state or local level, localized market and economic conditions can be considered. The cost of living is a hell of a lot more in Hawaii, California, and New York than it is in Mississippi, Florida, and Michigan. An across-the-board approach doesn't work. The federal government interfering with private business doesn't work. I'd really love to hear your thoughts and topics. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this topic. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think in the comments section below. If you're listening to the audio-only version of the podcast, there will be instructions on how to contact us in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening today to the Results Matter podcast. If you enjoy or find this content useful, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating and a great review, and share the podcast with others. It'll really help us get this content to more people who could really benefit from it. The Results Matter podcast is a production of Voorhees Business Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about additional services, products, or solutions designed to give your business an unfair advantage, you'll find a link to voorheesbusiness.com in the show notes. Be sure to sign up for free business coaching delivered right to your inbox. Thank you so much for listening today to the Results Matter podcast.